I'll take our small talk and I'll edit it into something at the beginning and just mix up everyone's sound clips so they're saying something ridiculous with some background music going on just to set the tone for the episode. Yeah.
Oh yeah. You gotta set the bar real low for me then. That's I feel like our bread and butter is wiener jokes for days. So I mean that's where you got to set that tone, I guess.
I don't know. I was listening. I think your bread and butter. I was listening to your review of Root, and you had like this whole skit in between it. I think you did that with the Twilight Imperium 4 as well. And those are always entertaining to listen to, especially when we have a faux French accent being kitty cats. Oh my Lord!
I am the Marquis du Cat.
The Marquis du Cat. But every time I hear, I'm so frustrated now because I missed my opportunity to get Root.
Oh,
and I'm just like, crap, it's a coin game I can play with my kids, and it just slipped through my fingers. I'd be like, been trying to find a copy, and people are like, I got a copy, but I'm gonna sell it to you for like 4 times more than it's worth.
Oh, no.
Like, no, I want to play it.
It's very good, and it like for the 40 whatever, like I don't know what, like 45 Canadian for that game. Like it's so 100% worth it. I played it with my 7-year-old. Like you can, it is very good.
Yeah, I know. Who was it? Andy. Is it one of you guys, Joe? Which one of you guys got Root?
All of us have it.
Yeah, I hear these guys yak about it.
And then without really sending me an email, I just received like what I believe to be a review copy with a plushie, and I'm like, I already got this game, guys. Come on, can't you tell me? So I gave it to Andy to review, so hopefully that asshole reviews it.
Well, we'll see. As much as he like just drooled over John.
Oh my goodness, I forgot that we're recording. No,
well, we're not using this. We're not using this part. Right. We haven't started yet. Curse away.
No. I did. Okay.
Well, Andy will be happy to know you referred to him in a positive way.
Affectionately. I love that guy. It was like affectionate.
Oh, okay. So I'll do the hosting duties on this one. I actually got a few.
Man, I'm a little fresh tonight.
I've got a few games of this weekend. I got to play it with the newest expansion, which was quite interesting. Makes it a very different game, that's for certain. Mm-hmm. And and so this is like one of my favorite Civ building games. At least it's up there. I know Joe's gonna be a little salty on it, so this should be a very interesting episode.
Yeah, I have. I did a little bit of research here, Aaron, just because when I first played the game when it came out, like I had some kind of reservations and things about it. And I think that kind of with the release of 51st State, I kind of just, got back into the system. And with the research I did recently, I definitely have some desire to go back and revisit it. So, and I'll kind of talk about that, how like these elements that I've been trying to pick through in terms of like looking for something to kind of give us a guiding light in navigating this episode in case it's needed. Obviously like you're here, you the boss, as the guest, but I do have like at least a few things, a few comments that I'd like you to react to, and just a little bit to like guide the discussion. But yeah, like TC mentioned, this was not my favorite game. So I'll talk about why, but I don't want that to cast that light like as the entirety of my input on the episode, because I do think that like, that there's a time and a place for me to maybe talk about the reasons that I had an issue with it. But just know that my views have been recently altered by intensive research.
Okay.
Oh, nice.
Sounds good.
Cool. Okay. Well, and like I said, I was kind of hoping a little bit Lindsay would be on here because I would be really interested to hear her take on it. But so in the future, if we can get your wife on as well, I would love to have you back with you and Lindsay together. That would be so awesome in so many ways.
If you want her to just come down and rip on it for like a 30-second blast, I can probably make that happen. She's just upstairs watching TV.
If you could, please, that would probably be the highlight of my whole evening.
Yeah, give me like
just like is there to troll you at your command. Like she's just there. She's just like, oh, it's time, honey, and she just knows what's coming.
There's literally moments that we've had in our podcast where I say something too loud and Quentin just yells upstairs about it, and she'll come running down and make fun of me on the podcast.
I think Carissa, my wife, ran down and yelled something when we was talking about Imminent Domain because she did not like that game at all. And I was starting to talk about she came in and had some choice words about it. So
that's crazy. Imminent Domain is great. That is a great game.
Well, don't tell Carissa. I like it myself, but
it's a Euro. Like Carissa just does not. She's never going to be won over by Euros on like Euro.
No, she's a historical war gamer through and through. That's what it is. Give her some dry Euro, you're like it's automatically at a disadvantage. Like
It's like what is Imperial Settlers? Where does it fit? Like in terms of the Euro versus like conflict heavy, what you will, Ameritrash, thematic style games. Like it's a toss up. I feel like it's one of those like much like Root, what you guys most recently covered on Boards Alive. It's it defies those sorts of categorizations, I think.
Yeah. It still is a pretty like I personally view it as a Euro leaning game.
Okay.
Because like it's all like resource management, right? And you get points. One of my friends complains about the game, and I don't find it a problem, but where you have to take an action to score points, right? So like, I'm triggering this card, I'm paying whatever resource or cost the card has, and I get 2 points or 3 points. And he just felt like the points should be naturally generated by the engine that you've built. And for me, no, it's totally not a thing for me. For me, I build the engine, I put these cards out, and part of it is spending my one action in that moment triggering that machine, right? Like you got to run your machine. It's not like a Rube Goldberg like Gizmos where you press a button and you do like 6 things. Like you have to combo things together. And I think that's part of why I really love Imperial Settlers in the first place, right? Is like combos are my jam. And so when you have these card combos that can just lead to massive spikes in points, or, you turn 1 stone into 3 stone, and then you use those 3 stone to, power these 2 other cards to get you 9 more points. Oh, and also every time you score a point with stone, you get +1 point or whatever crazy combo. Like that's what really draws me in.
Or your Sphinx gives you like an extra point for every 2 points you get. You just get this insane chain going. And I personally am a sucker for multi-use cards. That is like that's my Achilles heel with the Euro games. If it's a multi-use card system, I'm like, dude, I'm in. I am in.
Totally.
Yeah. Okay, we ready to start this sucker?
Sure.
All right, here we go. 3, 2, 1. Welcome to a new episode of The Long View. The Long View is proudly sponsored by Game Surplus, where you can buy great games at great prices and have them packed nice and neat and all nice and everything and all the good stuff.
Great plug there, TC. Game Surplus for all the good stuff and the great packaging and the good tea click and the happy smiles and fun.
Yeah, well, I gotta keep Carmen. If Carmen listens, I gotta keep him on his toes. Like, what's TC gonna say about my company now? I gotta keep up on this guy because I don't know what he's gonna say at any given time. We do have our the podcast pick still up. You get a nice discount if you use the code, which is a Longview Podcast Picks or something. It's at the beginning of the episode. It's all listed there. To go back, hit rewind if you want to listen to it. But we say thanks for Carmen and Game Surplus for sponsoring our show. Yeah. Tonight, I have a very special guest, a longtime host that I listened to back when we used to be the Pathological Nerdcasters before we became Punchboard Media. Our special guest tonight is Aaron from Boards Alive. Hi, Aaron.
Hey, thanks for having me on, guys.
Yeah, it's so weird to actually be talking to you and hearing you respond after listening to you for so many years.
Because for so many years, you'd hear my voice and you'd respond in your car yelling like, "You're such an idiot. Why would you think that?"
Well,
but I
it's
couldn't
laughter.
hear you.
Mostly it's laughter.
That's good. That's good. You're like, that stupid fool. Ha ha ha. What an idiot. I'm okay with that. I literally at work the other day had someone come up to me and be like, you don't have to be so hard on yourself. Like, you're doing a good job. And I'm like, yeah, dude, that's my jam. Like self-deprecation is how I like live.
Yeah. And it's always so rare to have a podcast where a husband and wife duo. You and Lindsay just are amazing. I love listening to you guys. And
thank you.
I've been wanting to have you on in some capacity, either in the long view or something. So thank you very much for responding.
No problem. Thanks for having me on.
And of course, I have my partner in crime, Joe Salin. Hey, Joe, how's it going tonight?
Good night, everybody. It is great to be out here, burning the midnight oil, listening to you guys go on about the bromance that apparently has been going on TC's ends for a long time. So I'm really glad to be able to preside over this marriage of two nerds.
Well, yeah, it's been a long time coming, Joe. Me and Aaron. It's just one of those things. I'm sorry you feel left out. We'll try to get you in on the jam here. How's that, Joe? It's
all right, man. I have a loud teacher voice, so I can drown you out maybe if need be. But then again, like I really like to speak extremely quiet, so that way you have to blare my track and get that nice little high pitched whistle when we actually record. So.
That's only if you're talking your iPhone, recording through your iPhone. Looks like we got a little better setup.
So lower the audio quality and make it rough on everybody involved. That's my job. That's what I do here. TC, thanks for having me. Aaron, it's good to meet you, dude.
Yeah, good to meet you too.
So as you can tell from time, we're going to be doing a long view on Imperial Settlers. Now, little backstory behind this. The biggest reason I wanted to talk Imperial Settlers with Aaron is on a podcast a few days ago. He had a top list of games, and Imperial Settlers came up, and his wife said, I absolutely didn't like that game. And Aaron said, well, it's higher up on my favorite games. I'm like, okay, I've got to get this on. This will be incredible. And then you, Joe, said, oh, we haven't covered that game. I'm like, oh, that's pretty interesting. I didn't even know that. I just wanted to have him on talk about Imperial Settlers.
TC sees a lit fuse and thinks, let's do this, man. This is all I want. This is great. Well, Aaron, it sounds like you're popping firecrackers on your show with the with your wife.
Well, so it's not just my wife. That's the problem. Is my co-host Quentin also hates Imperial Settlers. So it's just like both of them in that episode were just like tag teaming, making fun of me, being like, "Oh yeah, the game sucks," blah blah blah. And I'm like, "No, you guys are crazy. Like this is a very good game. In my personal opinion, top 50 game." And so it's an uphill battle around here to try and get it played, to be honest. My buddy Brendan is my go-to. He's a big fan of your show, by the way, so I wanted to sneak his name in there just so when he's listening, he's like, oh, that's me. But like he and I play it, and primarily pretty much always I've played this 2-player. I've played it a few times with 3. I've never played it with 4 because I think that would probably be stupid. But like this is my 2-player jam. This is how I play that game. So just want to make sure that's clear that my view and perspective is this is a 2-player game.
Okay.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Starting from out of the gate. So yeah, that's an interesting perspective. This definitely shapes the nature of questions, and I think you just shut down a whole.
Sorry.
No, you're good, man. You're good.
I think it's very important because even with the expansions, you do not want to go above 4 on this game. In fact, and like the expansion says, do not play with more than 4. It will be a chaotic mess of a game. But we are talking about Imperial Settlers. It is a 2014 release. It's Ignacy Trebacek. Is that how you pronounce his last name?
Sure. It's close. I
think that's the general accepted one, TC. I've heard Trebacek as well, and we're just going to go with it. And sorry, Ignacy, if it's wrong.
Ignacy Trebacek. Okay, there we go. Awesome. This game has been out for quite a while. It's had several expansions. I think it is a prime target for a long view. It's a very divisive game, and I'm thrilled to have Aaron on to talk about it. So without any further ado, Aaron, would you like to describe a little bit of what exactly Imperial Settlers is besides a game with a very fat Mario on the cover?
Yes, absolutely. I love the art in this game.
Oh, I love it too. It's the one game I have. I don't get rid of the insert. I've never gotten rid of the insert this game because it's so cute with the little artwork in it. But
and you can just jam enough stuff into the base box. It's just cards, really. Like you're just jamming it in there. It's fine. So Imperial Settlers is a card playing game. Essentially, you have you play cards into your empire. It's a empire building game, I guess. And the unique thing is that you have your own faction deck that you can draw from, as well as a common deck that everyone can draw from. And when you use your cards, they can be used in a couple different ways. You can use them to build buildings into your empire. On the right side of your board, it's going to be those generic common cards, and the left side is going to be your empire specific cards. But the thing is, usually when you play your empire specific cards, you need to build on top of a ruin of a common building. So either you have to destroy one of those common buildings, or you have to have been attacked and had one of those buildings turned into garbage.
Raised?
Yes, burnt raised to the ground. Yeah. And so essentially in the game, it's like there's a few different phases in the game, and it plays in 5 rounds, but the first couple rounds, you're just getting the basics of that building process going down. And there's 3 different rows of cards that you can lay down. There's like a production row where at the start of every round, every card that's in your production row will produce goods or sometimes points. And so you want to get that going as early as possible so that you're constantly developing or gathering more and more resources. Then the middle row is like it's like a feature. Powers row feature. Yeah, they're features, but the features are usually just like powers. So if one card might say every time you build a stone building or like a gray flagged building, you get a point or you get a stone or whatever. So those are kind of like innate passive powers that you get. And then the bottom row is action rows. And so these cards, you need to spend one of your actions to trigger that card. And usually it has some sort of cost. And when you get to the actual part where you're actually building stuff, you take one action on your turn and then it passes. And it goes round and round and round until everyone passes. And so one of the complaints sometimes with this game is that like one person taps out, right? They have no more actions to do, or they're wanting to keep whatever leftover resource they have for the next round. And the other person might take like 7-8 turns in a row of just like triggering stuff because they've built a better engine, or they just have more resources or whatever. And so, yeah, you do that for 5 rounds. And because it's a mostly Euro game, Joe and I can argue about that. You win by having the most points. Is that good? Does that make sense?
That's great. Yeah,
that's a really good, concise explanation.
Rounds, 4 phases in a round. I think there's like a lookout phase.
You draft. You can draft cards that way, which is I like that. Where you
is there anyone who doesn't use that variant? I mean, the way the rulebook says you do it one way, and then there's like this variant where you draft, and like, you know what, we're going to do it this way. And every time I played this game, everyone seems to lean towards that variant.
Do you do a draft like you get the cards, or is it like a Rochester style draft where you put them all out and pick
we do it where we draw 3 and we keep one and we pass the other 2 to the left?
See, I do the Rochester style. So we put out one more than the number of players and put them out in the tableau, and you do a snake draft.
Yeah, snake draft, because you do it again, like you put out 4 new ones, right? And then I'm pretty sure every time I've played the game, it's been specifically like that. I thought that was in the rules.
Yeah, that's in the rules, but in the back of the rulebook, there's a variant we can you draw 3 cards. You
like
keep
a Terraforming Mars style variant, where just a drafting and then picking and pass.
That method.
I've never tried it.
You should.
It seems better than. It seems like it would be less time consuming than the way the game actually plays, which might work into how you mentioned that you specifically like this game with 2 players. So maybe when you're playing at higher player counts, that's one specific phase where it reduces time, I guess, because if you're just you're gonna end up with 2 cards. You take 3 and then pick one, pass, discard the extra one. That makes sense.
The biggest reason I do it that way is the print on those cards is so tiny. I like having it in front of my face to be able to read.
There's a lot of card parsing in this game, too.
We broke this out Wednesday. I'm just like, I don't remember the font being this small. Holy cow, my vision's going to crap, man.
I do know that, like, when you do the Rochester style, everyone just leans
there's
real close. Everybody gets real close to the table. So I know what you're saying there. Like, I mean that, but so I mean I like the drafting addition to it. It kind of lets you control a bit of your strategy. But one of the cool things about the multi-use cards things that I mentioned is one of the ways you can use your card is just by raising it out of your hand. So you can spend like a sword to just take the resources in the top corner of the card. And I really like that because that sometimes will fit into my decision making, right? Like I always, when I'm drafting the cards, I look at what the card actually does. And then if none of the options I like, I'll be like, okay, well, which of the raise costs or raise rewards is going to be the best, and I'll take that one, right? And so it gives you like a 2-tier decision choice on kind of like your options for that round. So I like that.
Yeah, and then the fact you could even use one of your faction cards and spend a food and do it as an additional resource generation of production. I mean, that's one of the fascinating things about this thing is the way you can use these cards in different ways. I mean, you can even nuke someone's card by raising it. You can't raise your own once it's built. You can have to raise them out of your hand, but you can like, oh, that thing over there is giving you victory points. Yeah, that's going away. Goodbye. Oh, and by the way, I get stuff. You get a little piece of wood and you get a foundation. That's cute.
So that would be interaction, and in a Euro game, sometimes like having that level of direct interaction would push me to say like, ooh, that's quite a bit, like that's quite a heavy level. But really, like in this game, it's not strictly bad. I mean, you're getting a penalty of sorts to have your cards raised when they're in front of you, but you're not losing the foundation of the card, which in many ways, like that is the most important element for a lot of these cards, because you have to raise public or common cards. You can't raise the private faction cards in most cases. It's, there's exceptions because it's a very asymmetrical game, but that's one of the biggest ways that this game has interaction. Still has elements balancing it on both sides, which lead me to agree with your mentioning before of it being like kind of a Euro game of sorts, like that this is more Euro because it makes sense because when you get hit, it's like you still have stuff to work with, and you actually do get kind of like a compensation of a single wood, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, just one wood's like, here you go, have fun.
Which actually can be good, yeah, because to raise other players' cards, you have to spend more than to raise your own cards. Though, of course, you're foregoing the cost of the card that you're losing as well, because cards in this game might be the single most important resource, and that can get away from people because like you don't realize that like the cards themselves have all these instructions on them, but every card just being a card is huge.
Yeah, well, I mean, at the end of a round, you might have resources left over that you can't use just because you're out of cards. So like you could have built stuff. I didn't mention that in the quick rules, but at the end of a round, you can only usually keep one type of resource, right? Everything else is just tossed. And so running out of cards when you have extra resources and nothing to use those resources on can be really not deflating, but I mean, you're like, oh, well, I've obviously mismanaged one of my resources. But I agree. I think that the cards are your most valuable resource. The other resources can be gotten, whatever the word.
Obtained.
You can grab them, and you can get resources by using them, right? So, and there's a variety of ways that you can use them because of that. But yeah, I agree that the cards themselves are super vital. And one thing just to quickly build off of the whole like raising thing is like, I personally don't do a lot of attacking other people. I like the kind of like, and that's part of what I didn't like about 51st State was it wanted you to attack a lot more. Like it seemed like it had more of an emphasis on it because of thematically, I guess that makes sense.
Sure. But Aaron, I looked at, is this the first mention of 51st State or did you?
Oh, no,
this might be the first.
So. Yeah.
Okay.
So 51st State is the precursor from Ignacy that this like 51st State was developed and designed and released years before, and then he kind of like took the same system and added the whole faction thing to it, and kind of brought it into this version of the game. Yep. The dual deck thing is unique for Imperial Settlers, and in the original game, there's only one side. Right? Oh, there's only one side of cards. The cards are all generic, and it just doesn't. It's not the same for me. Like some people are like, "Oh yeah, I love both of them," and I just don't see the comparison. Like obviously the games are super similar, but Imperial Settlers is just like a far superior version of the game, in my opinion. The dual,
it has elements that you can find at all in, like, because if you like that unique faction, there's in 51st State, you have like a unique power, but it's not nearly the same level of asymmetrical play.
Totally. And so I love the whole faction thing and the different powers and the different abilities and cards that come through with that. And so like 51st State just kind of falls flat for me, and it puts more emphasis on attacking. And I don't really care that much about the attacking, other than like you can throw a wrench in someone's machine a little bit. But have you guys played the We Didn't Start the Fire expansion?
Oh, yeah.
See, I have not. I saw when I was doing research.
That adds conquest. That's a whole different ball game when it comes to this game.
Turns it into a knife fight?
Yeah, well, I thought that I wouldn't like it because it's so aggressive. Because I like my Euros fairly like solitaire. Like, I'm doing my cool engine building thing. You do yours, and we'll just see who's better at doing it, at running our machines. But then the We Didn't Start the Fire brings in this whole thing where, like, if I raise your building,
it comes to me.
Get it.
Yeah.
And so that thematically for me makes more sense, because like you want to steal their stuff. Like, it's not only are you hampering their machine, but now it might be a super good card in your tableau now too. And so there is a knife fight aspect where, okay, well, next round he's probably going to come back and stab me and take that thing back. But that whole process of stealing a resource or stealing that card for that round, I really liked it. I was surprised that I did, and I loved it. I loved it so much.
We recently played that, and I was the barbarians, and of course my wife was playing the Egyptians.
Barbarians are heavy raised. Like of all the factions, they have the best generation of the knives to be able to attack or raise cards out of your own hand or attack opponents. Just a side commentary for the faction.
Big surprise, I like barbarians, right?
So basically, TC was the necrovirus.
Yeah. So Carissa had like that stupid Temple of Ra where she goes, "I'm gonna put this thing out, and that thing's mine." So I conquested that sucker, and it came over to me, and I was pulling it on her. It's like, "How you like your Temple of Ra now? Boom, that thing's mine, ha ha!" And then that thing flew back and forth. It was hilarious. I was really surprised how much. The only downside to that expansion, it only works with the base 4 factions. It's really funny. In the rulebook, it says, "Don't use this with the Atlanteans and the Aztecs, because they're peaceful." I'm like, really? The Aztecs peaceful? Really? Okay, Trebuchet, I get your humor, but still, that's the only downside. But yeah, I agree. That conquest. I mean, if you ever stuck in a game of Imperial Settlers and you're just staring at something that I wish I could take out that stupid faction building, conquest lets you do it. You may have to pay out the while we're in for it, depending on how far out it is on your board, like 5 swords or something. But man, it's a good feeling when you can just take that thing away.
And I liked that aspect where the mechanic of the game is, as you build stuff, the earlier stuff you build is harder for people to kill. And so I love that has to work into your strategy, right? Like if this is a card that I really want to keep for the game, or make it really unpleasant for my opponent to steal it, I need to bury it. I need to play it early and protect it, right? And I loved that. I thought that added just like a whole nother level in the card play and strategy to it.
Yeah, and it was kind of the opposite of kind of getting the expansion talking, but opposite of what Why Can't We Be Friends? Because that one added an open production where someone else had to hop on it for you to be able to use it. So it was kind of a way to go, we're tired of this nice version. We're going to throw this in, and we're just going to just punch each other in the face. I recently played that this Saturday, and I was really surprised how much that changed it. And it got me, honestly, it got me quite excited about it. And I went ahead and pre-ordered the Amazons, because I know that's the new faction coming out.
Yes. Yeah. I see. I love the base game. I mean, yes. I don't know where we're kind of like, I'm going
all over the place. That's all good.
And I have the Why Can't We Be Friends, and I like that because the open production is a thing from 51st State, right? That's a thing where like you can let other people come visit your production facility, and they can get that resource, and they give you a dude, and now you have a little worker that you can use in your process now. But I liked that fine enough. It just kind of added more strategy. But I also, one thing that that I wanted to mention was I didn't feel like the base game races or groups or factions or whatever, they were civilizations. Thank you. I didn't think that they were super well balanced. I found that like the Egyptians and the Japanese were a lot easier at ramping up their civilizations and their engines better. I found the barbarians in the base game just didn't have a great like knife development program, you know, like their warriors were not getting trained well enough. And so I found that once I built decks with the first expansion, that helped balance it out. And it made, there were some cards in there that I felt like were almost essential, where they made the barbarians and the Romans a lot more like engine. Yeah.
The Romans, if I remember right, they're like all about, you just had to build. Romans were all about building. And the barbarians, I remember specific with the base barbarian faction, if you didn't get that dark temple out and utilized it like hardcore and it was aggressive as all get out with that thing, it was really hard to stay competitive in them, because you had to raise, and anything you could do to bring that up was big. And that might be a little complaint. It's like, you got to mill that deck and just get what you can out of it. And that's another interesting decision space with this game in particular, is that you're drawing your faction cards. You can use this card as an open production. You can use open production like with the barbarians and just make knives and just hang on to them. But if you use one of those cards, that like there's only one of those cards in that deck, if you bury that thing as a production, you can shoot yourself in the foot so quick in this game if you don't know the way these cards interact. But yeah, that could be a huge part. And I agree that I just like playing the barbarians, and I played them often enough that I could get decent with them. But yeah, it's hard to do that watching the Egyptians just like take off with the game. I mean, they're just building stones out the wazoo. They got that Sphinx where they score 2 points to get an extra point. They can throw that stupid temple token and just be a pain in your butt. And they just
get tons of gold, which makes you so versatile, right? Like the fact that they can churn out gold, and gold in the game can be used as a fruit or a stone or a wood, which are the three like other wood token items in the game. And so that's super nice to have, right? That versatility makes the Egyptians so good. And the Japanese, the weird thing about the Japanese is that they can put samurai on all their cards to make it harder for people to kill their stuff, but you can raise everything.
Yeah, with
normally you can't raise faction buildings, except the Japanese you're allowed to. And so that whole aspect of having to manage that is interesting with them, but there's just so much cool stuff that you can do with the Japanese as well. And so I always felt like when I played the base game, I had to play Romans versus barbarians, and then I had to play Egyptians versus Japanese, because that was the closest balance in that kind of like base box.
Yeah.
Well, so we've mentioned that like you generate victory points through specific conversions on building and specific abilities. However, one of the largest sources of victory points in this game could just be the cards themselves, regardless of their use. Like some cards specifically will be scoring cards that give you an additional scoring potential. Like an end game. Like you score points if this specific criteria is met or something like that. In addition to the points that you can generate by like activating them. But like every building is worth a point or 2 points, correct?
Yeah, your faction buildings are 2 and your base buildings are 1, correct?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, you're right. Like, I mean, you can just build. You can just like cover your board in cards. That's also the interesting thing about this game, is it's a table hog, and a weirdly horizontal table hog, right? Like if you have one of those rectangular tables where 4 people are playing and they all have to like sit at next to people, you're constantly going to be like sliding everything over by the end of the game, you've just like, it's such a weird layout in that everything's just become super horizontal on the table.
Yeah, it's just I'm like, guys, I need to move over here a little bit and just push everything over so I don't hit you or my because we have the faction buildings on the left always go like past 8, or it's just like, oh my goodness, I gotta move this over. Sorry, guys. Yeah, it's weird.
That's another reason why it's a good 2-player game, because you don't have to sit next to them. You sit across from them, and you have all the horizontal space you need.
Yeah, and another little neat thing that this game has in terms of the artwork is my daughter likes playing it simply because she get the only difference between the two sides of the faction board is one's male and one's female. And she's always making sure she's got the female side up when she plays the Egyptians, because she loves that Egyptian priestess on there. And I love that about this game. Just the little details like that. You can even look at the artwork and the cards, and if you take a real close look at them, they're always doing funny things on those artwork. Little workers doing crazy things around the buildings. Even the name, especially in the Atlanteans expansion, there are some hilarious buildings in there, just in terms of description.
Yeah, I actually like that Portal goes out of their way to make multi-gendered character options. They do that for like almost every game, right? Robinson Crusoe is like that. 51st State is like that. Like you get your character and it's double-sided, so that you know, based on how you want to represent yourself, you can be represented.
Of course, that may change with the Amazons expansion.
Oh yeah, that's true.
It might just be. Oh no, we'll see. It'll be interesting to see how they address that.
They should have like a really puny, scrawny male on the other side, just like a turd on the other side, you know, because it's the inverse.
Some weak look. I'm sorry.
Or just like have a male that's like wearing an apron. Yeah, maybe that's inappropriate. I'm sorry if it is, but like I agree with you 100%, Aaron. I think that the ability to choose your gender is nice. You know, it's to me something that's just like like I'm playing this with people of any gender, so I like being able to give people as many choices as they want. So you know, the more people I can reach via this, you know, making people feel welcome is just absolutely great. So yeah,
totally. So now, I mean, Joe, you don't love this game, but do you have a faction that you enjoyed playing?
Okay, boy, so I have played. I believe my first game was with the Egyptians. Then I played with the Romans. I played another game, I think, with Egyptians. I think I tried the Japanese, and I definitely played once with the barbarians. Okay, so I have played them all. All right. You know, it's kind of tough because so much of my view of this game is like stuck in what I feel to be very limited and kind of like almost excuses for why I wanted to avoid the game. You know, just even as I think about like my views towards the different factions, I think overall the reason that like I was kind of like about it is because I felt like, you know, there's things going on here, but I feel like I need to know this deck, and just not knowing this deck is really like there's a lot to it. So there's just so much asymmetrical, you know, like when I read about what the actual like, you know, content of the different things, like kind of the currents that you see that strategy guides have sort of like identified in each one, I'd say that I lean most towards the I think that if I was more ambitious, I would be Japanese that I would want to go with. But as a basic somebody who just wants things to be easy, and I want to have the knives. I'm not saying I want to use them, but I want to have the knives just in case.
Yeah, more like a Cold War situation.
There you go. Yes. I'm like you, Aaron. I don't want to use them, but like I'm gonna say barbarians is probably where I would just I want to specifically have that so people know like Joe's got that faction that has some teeth. So just in case you get any ideas, TC, people like you that want to hear the reaction. Oh boy, no, we both go down together, sugar. How about you, Aaron?
Yeah, which one you like?
Yeah, I think I like the Egyptians best because I love just the stacks on stacks of cash, and so I really enjoyed them. I think that through kind of like the additions of different things, I still enjoy them the most. I did want to say that I think the Atlanteans are stupid and broken, and I never play with them. I really didn't like them. The Aztecs were interesting as an expansion faction, but both of those just added length to the game that I didn't love. And I honestly preferred just the 4 base factions. And
But you do appreciate the other expansions that are not faction.
Yes. I like the more cards. I've done a limited amount of deck building with this, and I really like the deck building in it because it's very simple and straightforward. You have to put cards into the deck and take cards out, right? Like it's a set
We're
number.
talking pre-constructed decks here. This is like that next level that, there's variants in many games that have this, and I feel like this is that sort of like, if you've got a group that's just dedicated to this game, this is that next level. This is taking it to like that Magic the Gathering CCG level of involvement.
And the cool thing is they've set it up where you can do it two different ways. Like you can literally just take all of the cards from the expansions, throw them in a big pile, like add all the cards into the main deck and all the cards into your expansion deck and shuffle it all up, and there you go. And that, I mean, personally, I don't like that because it's going to water down your strategy, right? You're going to be hard pressed to get the cards you need, that you're dying for, and so I prefer the deck construction. And I agree that it's that next level stuff, but because it's so simply done, it's not an arduous task, right?
Sure. So the easy way is essentially diluting the deck to make it difficult to predict what you're actually going to see. But the way that they do deck building keeps it to a deck that you know what's going to come up, and the elements are fairly easy to grok as long as you're building the deck. The rules are very simple.
And you're keeping your deck to 30 cards, so you're like you're replacing sets, and I like that a lot, especially after spending so much time deck building with Arkham Horror and Legend of the Five Rings. It's nice to go back to this and go, okay, here's these. You lay out your set. You're like, I want to try this and this, and you try your combo, and you have your 30 cards, and you just go with it. And it can lead to things that don't work out so well, but when you get things that chain off great, it's a good feeling.
Yeah, totally. That's why I like that one. So TC, what about you? What's your faction of choice?
Well, I really enjoy deck building with the Barbarians. I know that doesn't come as a huge surprise. I like especially with that newest expansion, I was looking over those cards going, oh man, I can't wait to start mix and matching these together and just going to town on it. I personally like the challenge of playing the Atlanteans because I know I hear a lot of stuff. I hear you, it's broken. But the challenge with that one is you're putting a big target on yourself because your buildings don't score at the end of the game. Everything you're generating is victory points during the game. So that puts a big target on you where people are going to smash you down because you're just going to be flying out ahead. I like that. But honestly, I really like the Aztecs because I like the prayer tokens. I love that mechanism in that game. It is so incredibly cool. But if I'm deck building, I'm with Barbarians. I like that. I really enjoy it. But I like all of them. But particularly, I like the challenge of the Atlanteans because that's, of all the factions, that is been the most difficult one to wrap my head around and play effectively. Simply because you're scoring big points at the beginning and you're putting a humongous target on yourself with playing that faction.
See, and that's why. Well, the funny thing is, Brendan and I played the Aztecs versus the Atlanteans when we tried them. So we're like, hey. I had bought the Atlanteans, and then they sent us the Aztecs as a review copy, and I was like, "Well, we got to talk about the Aztecs on the show because they sent us something, so we should honor them." But I also have this one that I bought, so let's just slap them on the table and let's do this. Let's see what happens. And it took like 2.5 hours
with
for two of us to play.
I can imagine because with the Atlanteans, you have to build the other deck specifically to accommodate that faction. And the rulebook, it says you have to replace with the base factions. You have to replace these cards with the other cards to get those gears out, those gear tokens out, so everyone can generate with them. And I don't know if the Aztecs ever. I think they have Atlantean cards in there.
Yeah, I think so. I think they have that's the problem with all the expansions at this point is there's little rules, like you said with the We Didn't Start the Fire, oh, well, you have to take these cards out if you want to play with this mode, or you have to do this or that. And so it's starting to get a little finicky in the setup that makes it a little more limiting to get to the table, right? And you never at this point in my life, I can't have those types of limiting things or else they're just not going to hit the table. I have way too many games on the shelf, And I have more games constantly coming in because we're content creators and we've got all this new stuff that we're dealing with. And if a game is going to be hard to organize and get down to onto the table, that's hard. And then you add in the fact, like I think I mentioned on or off air, that both my wife and my co-host hate this game with a burning passion that consumes their soul, so much so that they will both rant and rave every time. Like literally, Quentin, every time I talk about it, I'm like, and that's Imperial Settlers, and he's like, yeah, that game sucks. Like it's it's just one of those things where he's just like shuts me down so hard with it. And so it's, with all the extra stuff that I have, it's a little limiting to get to the table, and two of my main primary gaming people don't want to play it with me. So I'm happy to talk to you guys about it. And I probably haven't played this game in months.
Oh, it's so sad
because of that, right? And it's one of my top 50 favorite games of all time, and yet I just can't get it onto the table. So
I feel your pain there, Aaron. I mean, if I want to make sure I never get a game played, all I have to do is come out in favor of it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know. I mean, there's, I don't know if you have this situation, but I have a shelf of games that my wife is going, we can get rid of those and get something else, right? I mean, there's like Homesteaders is up there. She hates that game. There's Imperial Settlers. This is Carissa's reaction to Imperial Settlers. It's fine. Now there's a whole lot packed into that, right?
Yeah.
But and that's the trouble with this game, is that you have to have people who are invested in it, who want to build the decks, who want to explore the game and do the kind of stuff. If you're always building the decks and you're putting that front end into it, and you're having other people try it out and they don't know what's in those decks, but you know what's in yours, you're gonna be at an advantage anyway. It's like building Magic decks, or it's like, oh, I built this deck for you, and you're gonna smoke it because you know exactly what's in it, right?
Yeah, so, and you built the other deck, so you know how to counteract their strategy already.
Yeah,
or you can. They don't fully understand the strategy. Really, what I should do, because Brendan, my saving friendship, he has his own copy of this game, and he has one or two of the expansions. So really, what he needs to do is build his deck, and I'll build one of my decks, and that's how we need to do this. He was. I mentioned today at work that I was coming on to talk to you guys, and he was like, oh, I'm super excited to hear what you guys have to say. And we haven't even explored this enough, Aaron. Like, we need to build some more decks. We need to do some stuff. And I'm like, we need to do that. We need to do that, Brendan. That's what we should do. So you guys are giving me the impetus to go forth and play more of this game, I think.
Well, excellent. You're kind of doing, this process is done somewhat the same for me, and this is pretty common on episodes of Longview. Like, a lot of times, like the community itself, board gaming in general, will keep games in the spotlight that have more there than meets the eye, because they keep on. Like, it's not so much, I think, that like people are getting on and rating it. It's that like people care enough to keep playing it and keep getting new people into it, and that's why these games you see rise up to the top 100. Now, I'm not saying that happens all the time. There's some great games that go without any love, but what Imperial Settlers maintaining itself, I believe it even entered the top 100 at some point. Right now, it's, I believe, sitting in like 100 and in the top 150 somewhere. But what really, like, reading into this has led me to see is, for me, the elements that kind of frustrated me were that I felt like that the interaction in the game, I just immediately sort of like bristled at that. Just the idea that like somebody could take something that I put down, like, what type of game is this going to be? Like, this is essentially where I'm over here building an engine, and then everybody else is looking for a place to stick a wrench in it. Like, that's, and that to me, like, at the specific time that I played this, which was very early on in the game system, like, I didn't understand what it was really looking to offer, and I played it with a group of people that were actually like fans of 51st State, so I think that they were like kind of predisposed to be like, just like, let's put it like this: the teach of the game, I don't think really kind of like, I didn't comprehend the entirety of like what types of systems and what I should really focus on. Reading strategy has led me to see, like, there's a lot more here about, like, it's almost like being compared to Race for the Galaxy by many people who really enjoy it, because it is like this engine building game. But, it's about seeing a ton of cards. Like, essentially the highest limiting factor in this game is the randomness of what you draw. And so the more that you can beat that by just drawing at everything, and there's like strategy guys that are just like, okay, this is what should be your primary goal, no matter which faction you're playing, and everything else, like how do you play a specific faction, is all listed under some separate heading. But like what you all need to do is just focus on like card production, and then secondary to card production is worker production, because 2 workers equals 1 card, simply because that conversion helps you get to that higher number of cards so you can see all 25 of your locations, which are each worth 2 points. Now, this, of course, the strategy guide that I'm reading from, I would like to plug it just because it has helped me a lot. It's written all the way back in September of 2014, back when the 4 main factions were there, and that was all that you had to go off of. But it sounds like, Aaron, that's the space that this game really hit its stride with the BGG top 100 voters that are like, okay, this is a game I can sink my teeth into, but I can get other people to play it as well. So I think that right there, seeing that you're sort of in that camp, in that, you know, the only expansions you've enjoyed have been ones that have not altered that prime, you know, like these are the 4 factions, these are, you know, this is how they all operate, like they kind of make sense. And then you're adding these expansions that sort of operate somehow differently and require a lot of extra rules and changes. Like that's where it started to get into like the weeds. I'm sure that there were people who really enjoyed them, like TC's mentioned, you know, Atlanteans, the way that they run, Aztecs, the way that they run. But that 4 starting factions was like something like Race for the Galaxy, where I've got over 1,000 plays of Race for the Galaxy. I know what it feels like to like totally commit towards one of these card games where like it's to the point where I know exactly how many blue worlds there are. You know, in Race for the Galaxy, like I just know that fact. It's like I know there's like slightly more of them than there are of everything else. You know, and I know that it starts at about 15 and then just goes kind of up to about the 20. And I've seen them all. I've like put the entire deck out. And I've been like, I know these cards. I have this all in my head. Like I know what it feels like to really just chew on a card game to the point where like every card does something slightly different. But I've got to the point where I know them all just because of brute force playing. So I know what that feels like, and I'm like reading and looking into this is like unlock that sort of like this has that potential of me to just lose myself in it. You know, like, but it still does not vie away from like these factions matter a ton. People who are like strategy, like people who are writing strategies are like, I play barbarians. So like it's like this person is the barbarian player. Like that's, you know, that's how the level of like asymmetrical play that you got here, that like not only is this the sink your teeth into game, but it's also the which faction do you play game. Like that's a pretty big bar to meet. And the balance of the base game, according to what many of the high level players think, is kind of like up for debate.
Okay. Interesting.
That's what I've been reading. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you there, but yeah.
No. But
that's not me.
I mean, and that's why, like, and that's probably why they produced it the way they did, because when you've got, you know, hundreds of playtests under your belt, you see how things balance out, right? And I think personal group meta will often skew things and mess with people's perception of the balance of games too, right? And so, or just like the ease of play early on, right? I think a lot of people early on were like, oh, well, these 2 factions are just easier to produce lots of points with, and so they're unbalanced. Whereas, like you say, if you know the right strategies, you can make those other factions work for you and be just as efficient and just as effective as the ones that some people, dum-dums like me, who think, oh, this one's totally the most powerful one, and they're like, well, that's just because you're dumb and bad at games, right? So that makes sense.
You're interesting. You are dumb and bad at games, but that's not the only. That's what you wanted, right? That's it.
Thank you. Yes.
What's interesting about Imperial Settlers for me is that it is such a huge efficiency game. I mean, if half this game is just making the most of your actions and making the most turns you can, make them as many actions as you can within your turn. Because if you can be efficient with your actions, figure out how to put that together, get that puzzle going, figure it out, and just keep going and going and going and going and going and going. If I've tended to notice that within the first 2 rounds, if the same person passes first consecutively on those 2 rounds, they are not winning the game. Especially if like they pass once, I'm like, dude, I still got 5 actions to go. Watch this. why am I do this? I just sit there, and at that point they know they lost the game, and it can be frustrating when you see someone, because at that point you know that thing's going to just slide in your favor, and because you're ramping up, you've got these actions figured out, you're going, and I mean, there was a point when like a second or third play as the Egyptians, I had almost my entire deck of faction cards built.
Oh,
it was crazy. And it was like round 4. They were like, there's no way we can catch you, TC. You were just being more efficient at this and figured it out. And
you're so smart and sexy.
Well,
and
you know, but that's the thing you got to understand going into it, is if you're not efficient with it's like Dominion on steroids. If you're not efficient with your actions, it's going to cost you the game.
And that's one of the huge reasons why I love this game. Like, people that have been listening to my show for the last few years, like, that is my jam. Euro games where I can build an engine and be super efficient and maximize every single turn that I take. Those people know that this is, and that's why this remains, even though it's hard for me to play, like hard for me to get to the table, it remains one of those games that's just like, it's very fulfilling every time I play it. Because, or frustrating in an enjoyable way, where I look across the table at Brendan and I'm like, you son of, like, you eked it out, didn't you?
You just watched that little track just go up like 12, 14, 16, 18, 21, 23. I'm at 11. Dang it.
And I passed 5 minutes ago and you're still going, right? Like, so those types of things.
Go out and get some coffee and go out for a walk. Let me know when you're done, because you've already won this. This is neat. I'm just going to sit here and pretend like I'm. Yeah, I could. That's one of the things that can be really frustrating about this game. The reason I like it so much is that I have this quest of the perfect civilization game, right? Ever since I played Civilization 1 on the PC, I've been looking for a board game equivalent, and I've had various successes with that. And Imperial Settlers just really scratches that civilization itch. We've got the unique card play, the resource generation, and all that. I'm not really big into Euro games, as Joe will tell you. I'm a pretty heavy war gamer, but just something about the way this civilization game works. I don't know.
I think honestly, TC, imagine this game. Here's what I think is the pin in the reason. This is the thing where if you release it, I don't know if TC feels the same about it. I think when it comes down to it, it's the art. I think like the art sets this sort of a whimsical silliness of like it's something that's different. I've not seen like your sort of like cartoony characters who's like have a gigantic mustache, huge round nose, and like eyes that aren't even open, like that's, like closed eyes, and that's like like that sort of cute looking cartoony character on the front of the box, and is pervaded throughout the artwork. The artwork to this game is definitely something that makes it specifically palatable towards players that otherwise like would have no interest in the system. And I know that because I feel like 51st State is such a similar game and theme, but like it just has such a more dire like this is post-apocalyptic.
Yeah.
We're scavenging the wasteland, and all of us are like just in the we're wearing rags. And then Imperial Settlers is like, here we are, like every time we take a step, it sounds like an air horn, like it's and.
That's a very good point, because Carissa, my wife, she didn't like 51st State simply because she does not like the post-apocalyptic theme at all. I mean, Fallout, she just will not video game or whatever. No. In 51st State, she didn't like but I throw out Imperial Settlers where you got the artwork, and then like in Civilization, the computer game, when the leaders come out, they're like, you can see these guys talking this way, right?
Yeah. Like mumble talking, like Banjo-Kazooie, like.
And now I would say that I'm gonna throw a wrench into all that for you guys, because even though yes, I love the art, I thought that for me, I would have loved 51st State better because theme is super important to me, and I love post-apocalyptic stuff.
I love it too. I love it to death.
I love that style, and yet I totally rejected that game. Like I was like, this game is nothing compared to Imperial Settlers, and so I don't know. I mean, yes, I think that the art definitely has a huge impact on it, and that whimsical feel of it But if we're talking about the theme of the game, I should have liked the other one way better.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, you've got like a civilization theme, which you're not usually a fan of, and you got so you're latching onto this for totally external reasons. Yeah, I mean, just having picked apart TC's mind, I guess I'm like kind of pointing a flashlight at him and being like, "You, sir, are guilty of this. Yes, you stand trial." And the thing is, like, for me specifically, having played them both. And I've heard this viewpoint echoed by other people who I believe are similar in that they have not played the game very much. Like inexperienced individuals that kind of like, moved on, but still like see some value there. And it's that like 51st State has this shared ecosystem, and really the game is about building up a giant machine and finding the wrenches. Like that's the game that's really about stabbing other people's economies, like finding the pin that they need to make everything else go, and then just removing it and being like, okay, your engine's great, but it ain't going anywhere. That's like it's so much heavier on the conflict, and it leads to there being less of an impact of really like the combo-centric card-heavy abilities, because instead, like anytime you see some sort of a broken combo, that game is much more interactive, and it's going to be like shut down, or potentially could be shut down without nearly as much personal cost as it is in a game of Imperial Settlers. There are times in Imperial Settlers when raising an opponent's building, specifically for like the factions that do not produce wood well, which according to my research are Rome and Egypt. They're stone factions, and so every time that they get wood, it is like a pretty big deal, because they can't even make a single deal to get wood. And so if you raise their faction or their common buildings, that gives them wood. That could be really great for them. And that's just because there's so much about this game that is the puzzle that you can't touch. And I think that's what 51st State people are like, well, I can't mess with that over there. All of his faction cards, like, this is crap. Like they just sit him down there and there's nothing I can do. What are you kidding me? Like, that's not what I'm here for. I'm not saying that's my view, Aaron, but I think that's sort of like, that's the mindset people go into it. And it's not fair to say Imperial Settlers has to be 51st State, but if you're expecting to be able to interact and you get through that first game, and like you mentioned, an early meta could just depend on which ones are the most easily apparent strategies, but you sit there and you're like, I scored 30, you scored 70, this is unbalanced. Or it's where you start sort of pointing the fingers at like why is it not my fault that I suck?
Yeah.
Not everybody is so welcome to it like you are, Aaron. Most people need excuses, reasons it's not me. And in many ways, I do kind of fall into that, but it's more like I feel like at the time I saw like there is something here. I know there's something here, not because I can see it, but because I can see others see it. People like you that I was playing with at this time were seeing like no, there's things to chew on here. It's more than just like, the Romans are broken because they had a runaway lead right now. There's so much to this game that is that snowballing economy that you mentioned, where you get that turn where you pass and somebody else is still going for 5 minutes, and that's where your runaway happens. But usually that is either poor play on the person that sucks, or like, some sort of a crazy combo that somebody pulled off that they got to hit. So, savvy play by the expert.
Yeah.
So that's that perspective, maybe not fair, but I think that's where it comes from. Just trying to sort of justify, and that's not necessarily me, but I understand that feeling. Now the new me wants to go back and try it again, but the old me says, what I just said.
I like New Joe better.
Yeah, one of the things I liked about Imperial Settlers over 51st State was the fact that I think Aaron already hit on this one, is that you get your own deck of cards for the faction you play. The Egyptians have their own cards, the barbarians. If I remember right, 51st State doesn't have that. Like, it's like a big common.
No, not at all.
Yeah. So that kind of gives it, it gives Imperial Settlers asymmetry.
An unshuffleable quantity of cards.
Yeah.
Like the 180 card deck.
Yeah. And and again, that adds to the what I like about Imperial is that deck building you're just doing with your own faction. And only you are pulling it off, and you're trying to counter other factions. So I think that maybe that's what you like, Aaron, the two decks.
Yeah, totally. Absolutely. I do. I mean, I love factions and like unique player skills, abilities, powers, whatever. And so it plays right into that. Right. And it allows you to, and I like that there's a difference between at the start of every round you get 1 or 2 off. I think it's 2 off of your own deck, right? And then you're going to get 2 more from the draft. And so that whole like, well, I think
it's 1 off your own deck.
Maybe is it 1? Okay.
Yeah.
So,
when it's set up, you get 2 faction cards and 2 common cards, and then you get at the lookout phase, you get 1 faction. I think 3 common.
It's 1 faction, 2 common. It's definitely 2 common. We can agree on the 2 common. Yeah.
Okay.
So, but I like that I also like that there's 2 decks, and when you draw a card, you have to make a choice of, do I want to draw from my own personal deck, or do I need to draw from the main deck because I'm looking to, immediately raise a card so that I can develop resources to do more stuff, that kind of thing. So like, I really do. I really love that 2 deck system. I love that you have your own unique world that you're living in. So yeah, I mean, these are all reasons why it's a fantastic game that Joe should love more.
New Joe, yeah.
New Joe.
Fortunately, you have New Joe.
Old Joe, I don't care about.
Yeah, you never even knew that guy. He was awful. Like, tell me about it. He's just misery to be around, right, TC? I mean, it's just better now. We're all happy.
Your mood.
That's true. That is very true. The guy knows me. So, I'd like to say one more thing that is a reason that I am now like New Joe, Joe that's like taking a look at this game from a more like perspective of like, I really respect a game when it has that decision space. Like, that's what I'm looking for. That's what a Euro game needs to have. And when I get frustrated in my first play of a game and say, oh, there's not enough interaction here, that's why I'm losing. That's why, you're like, some of these factions can score super high and there's nothing you can do to catch them. No, like, people that are experienced players at this game can reliably score like over 100 points. Oh, yeah. Like, that's like that sort of bar that's like reliably scoring 100 is pretty huge. And like, my games, I didn't even score 50. And that's like, to give you an idea, like, that reminds me of the game Marco Polo. My first game of Marco Polo. By the way, I was a guest host. That was before I took over with TC here. So it's kind of like, in a way, Aaron, it's like that's a game where I can relate, because so many people play Marco Polo and suck at it, like 48 points. My first game of it, I got 48 points, and like a great score in Marco Polo is definitely closer to 100. Blowing over 100 is like, one of those where you screenshot it and send it to all your friends. Hey, look at this guy right here. Yeah. No. Yeah, it was a good game. So the thing is, like, having that discrepancy between players that really get what's going on in the game, like, all the elements that you have mentioned, Aaron, are pieces of that puzzle that make this something that people are so interested in coming back to. Like, you've got the variable faction that just makes it immediately from the beginning like, oh, what am I going to play this time, for many people? Or like, how can I specialize? Then you add the aspects of pre-constructed deck building that you talked about. I mean, really, like, this game, anytime that a player complains, I feel much like in Donald X. Vaccarino in his design of Kingdom Builder, everybody's like, oh, I hate that you only have 1 card. So he made it so that one of the abilities in the game makes it so you don't have only 1 card. You have 2. It's like he's saying, like, seriously, if you thought it was that good, here you go. Here's an ability. It balances out with everything else. It's not that big of a deal. And I feel like that's the same way that Ignacy has approached the design of these extra cards. Is like, maybe there's a few cards that sort of like give pieces to the different engines that weren't maybe there, and so that make them more playable from people of varying skill levels. But really, like, experienced players know that, like, this is something where you sink your teeth into. Anytime that you think this faction is the best, there's going to be somebody who's like, oh yeah, play me. I'll play this faction, which you say is bad, and I'll beat you.
Yeah, watch you go. Yeah. Yeah, it comes down to how well you know that deck and what you need to look for and what you need to build and how you execute. Like I said, it's a very efficiency-oriented game. It's good. I like it.
Yeah, so overall then, this game right here, like, what's coming next from Ignacy in the series? Is the next one going to be like space card factions, an interactive space faction where you've got faction decks and they're all tied to like different alien races, and you stab each other like crazy, the 51st galaxy or something?
Well, I to be honest, I think Alien Artifacts was his attempt at doing that. Like, you're joking about it, but I mean, Alien Artifacts.
You're right, yeah.
Was the sci-fi, like, it had a similar layout, your player board with multiple, like 3 different rows, and that one totally fell flat for me. And so I love that was your go-to joke, and it totally has actually occurred. Like, that makes me so happy inside.
Oops.
Like, I mean, I think for Ignacy, like, I think he's always gonna tweet. I think he has a love of card games, right? And so, like, I mean, he's done this similar idea in different capacities in 3 different ways. In the same way that he took Robinson Crusoe and turned it into the big stinking pile of poop that First Martians was.
Oh, nice.
And so it's like, I don't know where he's gonna go next. I mean,
hopefully not space, man. Space apparently is not a great place for Ignacy.
I would be happy if he just released more faction expansions. I'd be very, very happy.
Yeah, I'm interested. I'm interested to see what the Amazons look like, and how they play, and what kind of interesting stuff they add. Like, he's got me hooked. I'm gonna send him my money for these games because I want to see what else he has in there, right? Like, I'm happy to keep playing this game because it's got its hooks in me, and I don't mind taking some time out of my day to build a deck or whatever that's gonna maybe be fun for me to play. I'm not that person that you described that's like, this is my faction. Like, I've never been very good at competitive level of games. Like, I've done one tournament organized play in my life, and that was Netrunner at Christmas when my friend came home, and he's huge into Netrunner.
It's like you were like the cannon fodder.
And so, like, he brings me out, and there's a couple like schlubs there, and I win like one game, but one dude sits down and he's like, blap, 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 playing all these cards, doing all this stuff. And I'm like, what the hell is happening right now? Like, so I'm not that high level person. And this that's why I like to make a variety of balanced decks or things that I think would just be fun to play in this game. That's kind of how I run this game. And so I'm interested. You guys have me thinking that Brendan and I just need to go head to head, make our own decks with what we've got, and see who's really coming out on top in a low stakes championship here. That's what I feel.
You could make it high stakes, make it best 2 out of 3.
Oh my goodness! And the loser has to give the other a high five.
Yeah.
The best way I found to do that is, I think in the rule book specified, is like, you just pick one expansion, right? You say like, well, why can't we be friends, right? And you say, I'm going to use just these, and we're going to build just using these cards. And if you keep them like you just use an expansion at a time when you deck build, it's a cleaner game. I've tried it with a few, and they don't really mix together very well, and like nothing synergizes, and it just kind of blows up in your face. It's an experience. I wouldn't discourage you from doing it, but definitely keeping it within like the single empire decks. Just pick one and work with that, then put those aside and pick another one, work with that with the base cards.
Right.
That's definitely the way to go with that, because I've tried it. I tried like, why can't we be friends? And 3 is the magic number and the base. And we had some wonky stuff going down that was like, how does this ever chain off? I don't think these were meant to work with each other. Okay, let's just back off that and just keep just using an expansion at a time.
Yeah, like that. Actually, we don't have to play with that expansion. Like when somebody's like, what does this do? Actually, we don't have to play with it. Like when you take it away and you're like, you didn't see that.
Oh, you're gonna put this back. Yeah, I'm gonna put that back. Yeah.
So 3 is the magic number. Then did not entice you to play the game with 3, or was that like not what the title was referencing?
You go ahead.
It's about like sets of 3 of something, right?
Oh, okay.
So it's not that you're playing with 3 players. It's more that you're trying to get these 3 sets of buildings or 3 sets of like, it's all based around 3s. That's why 3 is the magic number.
Yeah, because there's nothing else to call that.
No. And so well, I mean, he's going with song names, right? Like that's what he's doing with all these. But I mean, but yeah, so
where does 1 is the loneliest number, the solo expansion. This game does play solo.
It does. I've played it once solo. And I mean, but that's not a good mark. I don't really play solo games very frequently, so I don't take that as an indictment of if this is good as a solo game or not. But
usually the solo gamers are the ones that are kind of like the ones that are most tinkering with like whether this is balanced or not, because that's almost like they almost take it upon themselves to be like the developers to sort of log how much they do. I mean, it's, when we talk about solo gamers, they're some of the most active BGGers for sure. So certainly many will listen to this episode, and maybe more will be able to tell us in the when we post this, the final episode and post about it on our guild, like whether or not there are, like what people view this as a solo game, whether or not, is it a 2-player specific game? I mean, it sounds like 2 players would make sense and fix the other main complaint that I ever levied against this, the first of which we've totally debunked, because reading a single strategy article leads me to say that was a very short-sighted criticism to say, oh, this doesn't have the interaction of 51st State. That means it's not as balanced. It's not as, so I was wrong in saying that. And the other thing I'd say is the length. And what you said earlier, Aaron, is that this is a 2-player game, and that is largely due to length. Yes?
Yeah, totally. I mean, it's fat. It's just quicker. It's just a back and forth. Like I take an action, you take an action, back and forth. And there are moments where maybe a third player wouldn't slow it down because you have to make your choices, and it's moving so quickly. But just the fact that like in a 3-player game, you could have the like, oh, let's tear down the winner or tear down the leader type of thing. So like Jim's up by 20 points. So we're just going to raise all his buildings, both of us. Like, I think it's just more pure as just like a head-to-head game. So that's just, I mean, but again, that's my very smart and experienced position on how this game should be played.
I want to point out, in terms of the solo game, Aaron, this game has a fantastic campaign mode in a solo variant that if you have not tried it out, it is really cool. It's really interesting when it does, because you play it and you build up, and that things carry over and you keep going. So you're doing this whole campaign in the solo mode. And if you have a chance to do it, I'd recommend it. It's a few plays through, but it's pretty cool. It does, and you can only do the campaign mode in Imperial Settlers if you play it solo.
Really interesting.
Yeah. So give that a look. I'd be curious what you think about that, because I played the campaign mode twice and really enjoyed it. That's how I got to know my barbarian deck really well.
That's a cool way to approach the civilization aspect of it, because civilization is largely about the continuing, like what continues on to the next age as you have to like through the ages. It's like things become obsolete, so what are you going to do to continue to innovate and keep your civilization scoring the most points?
Yeah, totally.
And then you're like hitting achievements, and you can like see how well you compare to like how well you did and what you did, and there's like a certain number you want to hit, and it tells you how good you played and stuff. But the campaign mode is pretty interesting. It was fun. I enjoyed it, and it, like I said, it gets you. It lets you see what your deck is doing and how to execute it better when playing against other people.
That's a cool aspect to that you can almost like run it against an AI just to test it out. So before you take it to, that winner take all head-to-head match that I'm going to have with Brendan and try and kick his butt. Yeah.
And it's really, I like the Arkham Horror Card Game, but that's all that's cooperative. This one you can like play by yourself and then like, okay, I got this thing, let's go.
Totally.
A little moment of comic levity here, because come on, Aaron, can't you do comedy any better than that? I'm sorry, man. Like, see, since you've come out as being the masochist, the self-deprecator, I have come out now as the sadist, the torturer. Because that's the right. That's
come on, Joe. We want to bring it back.
This is healthy, Aaron. This is healthy. No, dude. Seriously, it's been. I would say though, as a self-deprecator, you have failed, because you gave yourself a compliment earlier. You said that is my super experienced and smart look. This game is so good. It has driven Aaron to give himself compliments. You say it here on the long view. So my comic reference here is to Murr, who's in our chat here, and I remember one of the best videos, if you've never seen it, for board game humor, produced by the amazing Chaz Marler, and it is called the the 2015 10th annual biannual board game decathlon, the annual biannual. So anyway, yeah. The thing is, in the game, Ignacy was playing on the he's like, I'm playing with these new unreleased expansion. This game it's an unreleased expansion in the US. These Why Can't We Be Friends cards are overpowered. They are going to win. And I play Mur and I lose. And he's just like it was a hilarious way to sort of dig at those people that are like, this is unbalanced. Because I hear that so much from within and from outside the Imperial Settlers cadre, whatever you want to call it, that there is always argument about that. But the argument almost points to that there's not just a single connecting thread. So, but I found that video is hilarious. You should check it out if you've not seen it. And by the way, congrats, Mur, once again on the absolutely come from behind win in every single one of those games in the decathlon. So.
Oh, so anything you want to wrap this up with before we go? I know it's getting late over on your end, Joe. Any final thoughts here on Imperial Settlers, Aaron?
Oh man, it's so good, and you got to play it. You just got to do it.
Yeah,
I'm not just Joe. Everybody listening, just give it a chance. Just get
mainly your wife and your co-host. That's who he's talking to right now. That's
Lindsay, Aaron is play Imperial Settlers already. I don't know if that's gonna summon her to the basement. I might have yelled really loudly. So we'll see. She might just randomly pop through the door all of a sudden and be like, Imperial Settlers sucks.
Just not worth my time.
Yeah, she does.
Mode. You talk about this crappy game again.
Out of screen, you just see a fist that's just like, oh.
And thus ends the episode.
Yeah, honestly, I think that it's worth playing. Right. I mean, you may fall on the side of less intelligent people and think that it's bad, or you might fall on the side of handsome and amazingly sexy and talented people like me and think that it's really good and that you want to dive deeper into it. I mean, but it's worth a try. And even if you've played 51st State and you didn't like it, there might be aspects of this that draw you in, because like I said, I wasn't drawn to that one, but I've really, really enjoyed this one. And so that would be what I'd say is I recommend you play it. Give it a shot. If it's not your cup of tea, that's cool. No big deal. But I mean, if you like engine building games, if you like card comboing, if you like anything like that where you're trying to be as efficient as possible, this is gonna be something that works for you probably.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, having been in both sides of the division that you made there, being both a sexy, muscular, sweet-smelling individual, and also just a loathsome, oafish, lazy, snobbish, angry at the world person, I definitely like New Joe better. I like the New Joe likes Imperial Settlers.
Joe, you can never. There was one guy I tried teaching this game to, and he flat out refused it because of the Fat Mario guy on the cover. He's like, I ain't playing some game with Fat Mario on the cover.
It has the effect of making it seem like something that some people are going to totally gravitate towards, and others are going to be like, heck no. And I think that both sides should play it, because I think that it really does have the potential to please them both. But that maybe is why, imagine though. This game is called Imperial Settlers. That's like taking Imperial, which if you look at that box is totally frowny. Like here's a bunch of industrial age men standing around a table discussing the war in the distant lands. And then you take Settlers of Catan, which is like, let's build a house.
The longest road.
It's like, yeah. And you take those two totally agrarian, very boring sounding themes, and what could have been a very by the books Euro design. I feel like, sort of like a serious, not like a kind of humorless design. And I would say 51st State is fairly humorless in its cards. It's not like, if there's humor there, it's sort of like a shining beacon in the wasteland. But here in Imperial Settlers, everything, even the buildings that are totally mean, have these cute little pictures of those little barbarians, and they're look at they're wearing. It's just like little cavemen. Aren't they cute? So it's got, I think that mood that's struck here made it something that's not just like, oh, I see the connections here, but also something that appeals to a much larger audience, because it's like, this is just goofy, isn't it? And that's mainly the artwork, because the game core there has those, like, you know, the spike type players, you know, compared to Magic the Gathering. You said that you're not really the aggressive tournament style player, but it has the space for those spike players. It has the space for the deck building, combo heavy. Let's make this cool and different and unique and something I've never seen before, which sounds, Aaron, like, you know, if I may, what you've enjoyed from this game and what keeps you coming back. So it's got the ability to appeal to a lot of people, as well as to turn a lot of people off. Vlada Kibattles, a lot of his designs have that same sort of aspect of being very polarizing, and that means there's something special there. Those are the games that deserve to be on the long view. And Aaron, you did a fantastic job here, buddy. It's been great meeting you.
Oh, thank you so much for coming on, Aaron. I was thrilled. You're like, of all the barrage of emails I sent, you're the first to respond. I was like, yes, Aaron, finally it's happening.
I like to answer emails. I always am like, oh, someone thinks I'm important enough to take time to send me things. Yay! So I was more than happy to help you guys out with this.
And if there's any other game you want to talk about with us, you have an open invitation, man. This has been a great episode.
Maybe wait until I finish my top 50 and you can just cherry pick some of those that can come on and be like,
it's going to be whatever your
great.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Actually, what we should do, we should bring Lindsay on and talk about her favorite game so she can buy something she likes and you don't. See, there we go. That's what we got to do.
See, well, the problem is I like too many things. Like Lindsay's always like, you just like everything. Nothing is bad to you. Like, and that's not true. I feel like as a reviewer, I will say there are some games that definitely suck, but I do like a lot. I'm a fairly omni gamer. And so whatever she says is her number one is totally going to be something that I love. So I don't think that'll work. I don't think there's a game that she loves that I'm like, yeah, that game's fine. It's pretty rare that it's a game that she loves that I don't dig in some way. But we'll see. We can try and make it happen.
Well, maybe we'll see. But yeah, I just want to make sure you have an open invitation, because I've been procrastinating. I've been wanting this to happen for years, and I'm glad it's finally happening, and I don't want it to stop.
That's what she said. But for me, it usually stops pretty quickly.
Nice. We had to have that to end on.
Almost.
So thanks,
I was going to say.
The wiener joke, like, it was due. You promised it. Maybe it was pre-show, but it was promised. So thank you very much, man. I was definitely going to call you on, like, where was it? But now you've heard it. And that's Aaron of Boards Alive, everybody.
All right. Thanks, everyone.
Yeah, thanks for being here, everybody. See you on the next Long View. Take care. Have a good one. Enjoy all the games.